Greetings, mortals. Welcome to another session of the Infernal Court in Musical Hell. I'm Diva, your judge, jury, executioner, and manifestation of your inner child. With all the rebooting going on in movies these days, the time has come to discuss a particular type of reboot, the movie musical cycle. You've seen how this one goes. There's a movie, it gets turned into a Broadway musical, and then if it's popular enough, the musical gets turned into a movie. This is nothing new. A little night music, anyone? And sometimes the results can be quite good. Other times? Well, that brings us to our next offender, 9. 9 is rounded up from Federico Fellini's 1963 classic, 8½, and is the work of writer Arthur Caput and composer-lyricist Maury Yeston. Though not exactly a high-profile show as far as the general public is concerned, 9 has a respectable reputation in the music theater world, having 5 Tonys, including Best Musical. The film version comes to us courtesy of Rob Marshall, who with Chicago was instrumental in bringing a measure of respectability back to the live film musical. How did he capitalize on that goodwill? Let's examine the case of 9 and find out. The central character of the story is Guido Contini. Yes, his last name is Anselmi in the Fellini film. I think they just changed it to make it more lyrical. Who is one of those troubled visionary types who smokes a lot and obsesses over his work and generally struggles with the pain of being a troubled visionary. He also has a lot of issues with women, as evidenced by the fact that he sees a whole bunch of them crawling over the set of his latest movie, including some kind of stripper nun lady and his mother. Because sure, don't all Italian matriarchs look like Sophia Loren? Guido is a celebrated film director hard at work on his latest project, Italia, despite the fact that it doesn't have a script or a budget. He's a troubled visionary, he can get away with this sort of thing. So he and his producer Dante bluff their way through a press conference while Guido deals by fantasizing about his I Want song.
I would like the universe to get down on its knees and say, Guido, whatever you please, it's okay, even if it's impossible, we'll arrange it. That's all that I want.
I have a couple problems here. First, there's this song itself. Daniel Day-Lewis's singing is okay, but it lacks passion, and it feels like Guido clambering all over his half-completed movie set like some sort of oversized jungle gym is overcompensating for that fact.
Guido, 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 me.
But there's an even bigger sin, the way the musical numbers are handled in general. As with Chicago, the songs in 9 take place in the protagonist's fantasy world, which on paper sounds like it's a good idea. After all, one of the most compelling aspects of 8½, is the way it blends fantasy and reality, and gradually blurs the line between the two. But what worked for Chicago doesn't work here, mainly due to a matter of perspective. In Chicago, the songs are understood to be a reflection of Roxy's viewpoint, and they work as such. In fact, Class was cut from the film precisely because it didn't fit into that angle. The songs in 9 are intended to reflect Guido's perspective, and sometimes that works, like when he gets a bit of phone sex from his mistress Carla and imagines her in kind of a burlesque circus act.
But this will have to be enough for now. Guido!
Well, it worked until that last run anyway. And if 9, like the movie it was based on, was entirely focused on Guido's viewpoint, it might have pulled this gimmick off. But the musical puts a lot more focus on the women in Guido's life. Indeed, in the stage version, he's the only male character in the cast. As a result, some of the songs reflect a perspective that Guido, who is firmly established as a self-absorbed, emotionally stunted man-child, would not have the insight to understand. Take My Husband Makes Movies, the I Am song for Guido's long-suffering wife, Luisa. The wife is always long-suffering in movies like these.
Once we two were Guido Contini, Luisa his lover, actress with dreams and a life of her own.
The whole problem with Guido and Luisa's marriage is that he takes her presence for granted and doesn't truly appreciate her, so how would he imagine her making this statement? The issue becomes exacerbated in an unusual way, where Guido's star/muse Claudia declares she's tired of him putting her on a pedestal and outright says that he doesn't freaking get it.
You don't know what you do to me, you don't have a clue. You can't tell what it's like to be me looking at you.
You can't take such deeply introspective and personal moments and set them from the viewpoint of a character whose entire issue is that he cannot truly connect with the people around him. So Guido is basically cracking under the pressure of being a troubled genius, what with his last two movies being box office bombs and the press hounding him for information he doesn't have about his current project. In the resulting anxiety attack, he escapes the press conference and drives off to a scenic little spa to decompress. Carla is invited to join him, but she gets upset when he doesn't let her stay with him in his suite and instead puts her up in a cheap little boarding house by the train station. Well, no wonder she's mad. The least the jerk could do is spring for a room at the Ramada or something. He also kind of sort of asks Louisa to come, but is hampered by general marriage falling apart issues. Meanwhile, Dante invites himself and the entire film production staff to come and set up shop in the spa so that they can actually get some work done on this theoretical movie, while the circus music on the soundtrack tries to convince us this is all more fascinating and bizarre than it actually is.
Did she like the script? No, impossibile. Are you telling me she didn't get the script?
Per Paolo!
Among the film crew is Guido's costume designer Lily, Dame Judi Dench doing her usual "I'm Dame Judi fucking Dench and that automatically makes me more awesome than anybody in the room" thing, who acts as the no-nonsense tough love influence in Guido's life and also gets a big production number about the Folies Bergère just because.
Directors are so existentialist. The movies are not worth their entrance prices if no one sings a love song when he's kissed.
And now, another overarching issue with this movie.
But what does it mean?
Sin number 3 is the general sensation that this film is trying a little too hard to be all artsy-fartsy. This is perhaps to be expected, as its source material is about as artsy-fartsy as you can get, but in this case it amounts to much less purpose. There's noisy, busy scenes backed by circus music, the movie swings between black and white and color for no discernible reason, and Guido's 9-year-old self pops up during Judi Dench's cabaret number. Why? Because it's his lost innocence or inner child or whatever showing up to tell us? I don't know. It doesn't matter because it has the semblance of being something profound without anything to back it up. Likewise, the next scene where Guido hallucinates that Claudia is with him. Why does she show up in this particular moment, and what does her presence tell us about Guido? Nothing, really. It's just a random scene between the random Follies number and a random encounter with a priest in a hot tub. Priest in a hot tub would be a great name for a band. Or a cocktail. Anyway, talking with a priest brings up Guido's latent Catholic guilt, and he reminisces about his first childhood solicitation of a prostitute. Ah, the joys of youth. Said prostitute, Saragina, delivers a lesson in being a good lover. Basically, you're Italian, just do what you do and you'll be fine, as well as the movie's saving grace. Be Italian is like They Call the Wind Mariah, in that it's sung by a character who's at best peripheral to the entire story, but it's still by far the most memorable piece in the entire score. And it's the one that Marshall stages the best, with the use of the tambourines and sand creating some effective, visually arresting images. It also leads into one of the most powerful scenes in the musical, where young Guido gets caned for his behavior while his mother turns away from him in shame. Seeing Guido getting punished and rejected for sexual impropriety before he's old enough to understand the concept, much less participate in it, does more towards explaining the character's major malfunctions than the rest of the movie put together. Later, at a production meeting/dinner party, Louisa shows up and tries to do her supportive wife thing, but that goes out the window when Carla happens to put in an appearance at the same restaurant, and Guido's, "No, really, honey, she just happened to show up. I totally didn't arrange for her to come down here. It's over between us, really," spin fails to impress her. Imagine that.
It's finished. It's finished. If it wasn't before, it is now.
Blah, 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 blah.
Real good argument there, Louisa. Unable to come up with a response to such a witty retort, Guido goes downstairs to the bar, where he gets hit on by Stephanie, a fashion reporter for Vogue who flirts with him in the most effective way possible, by going for the ego.
I've seen all your movies.
Really?
A million times.
Stephanie expresses her fangirlishness in Sin No. 4, Cinema Italiano, which is Rob Marshall's excuse to get all music video with the editing for about 4 minutes.
Continue cinema Italiano. I love it, cinema Italiano.
This song doesn't add much to the movie, and it demonstrates what bothers me about Stephanie. The stage version also has a journalist character, but there she is a critic who is particularly hard on Guido and his movies. I think this is important because it demonstrates another facet of Guido's tangled relationships with the opposite sex, and also feeds the insecurity and anxiety which hounds him throughout the story. Stephanie doesn't challenge Guido in that way. In fact, she's basically a ditz who adores him and his movies for superficial reasons. He already has a wife and a mistress. Do we really need another potential love interest thrown into the mix? Obviously we don't, because Guido slips into Stephanie's room long enough for a brief peep show before he chickens out and runs back to his wife. So, yay for him letting a single opportunity to bang a groupie pass, I guess? Not that it lasts, because 30 seconds later he's running over to Carla's bedside to comfort her after a suicide attempt.
What have you done to yourself? I'm not worth dying for, Carla.
No shit, Sherlock.
Incidentally, Sin No. 5 on how Guido's genius and appeal to women are basically informed abilities. In Amadeus, for example, Mozart is crude and childish, but his brilliance is very much in evidence, and even his vulgarity has a certain charm to it. Guido mostly wavers between nonentity and spoiled brat. While he nurses Carla, Guido indulges in some more navel-gazing, this time involving his younger self listening to his mother sing Sin No. 6, Guarda la Luna.
Oh, dream of your youth when I'm still by your side. Dream of your manhood, pray I'm where to guide you.
Look, I get it. You've got Sophia Loren in your movie, and damn it, you're gonna use her. But this song stops the movie dead, and I'm not entirely sure what it's supposed to indicate. The fact that Guido's relationships with women have been one big long search for a maternal surrogate? Is he fantasizing the idyllic mother-son relationship he never had? I don't know. Also, what's up with the candles in this scene? I half expect Sting or the Phantom of the Opera to come waltzing through here. After an awkward encounter with Carla's husband, just realized this movie is essentially one long string of awkward encounters. Dante tells Guido to stop futzing about, get off his ass, and start making his opposition-damned movie already. So he goes to the studio and does some costume tests with Claudia in hopes that ogling her through the camera will provide the proper inspiration. I get the feeling this is how a lot of Guido's movies ended up getting made.
I'm going back to my hotel now.
Oh, but please, just a couple more costumes, Claudia.
I'm going back to my hotel, my darling. And when there is a script, I will read it, and then we can take it from there.
Yeesh, what a prima donna, expecting actual information about the movie and her role before she commits to the project. I don't know where she gets off giving herself such airs. Claudia realizes that Guido doesn't really have a movie in mind, and his attempt to pull one out of his ass by describing a thinly veiled version of his life and perception of her role in it amazingly fails to convince her. So she explains to Guido that even though she loves him, she knows he's never really seen her for who she truly is, and therefore cannot love her in return.
Since the first day that I met you, how could I ever forget you? Once you had touched my soul.
Again, I'm not sure why an intelligent, elegant woman like Claudia is so hung up on Guido to begin with. She seems far too self-possessed for it. The breakdown of Guido's creative and personal life continues when Louisa joins him for a screen test and hears him coming on to a random starlet using the same lines he used on her all those years ago.
Thank you. Thank you for looking like this.
Louisa is obviously heartbroken, and the fact that Guido is oblivious to her obvious heartbrokenness doesn't help much, so she breaks it off with him for good in sin number 7, Take It All. In the Stuff You Like episode on Mad Max Fury Road, Sursum Ursa discusses the nature of objectification in film, particularly the fine line between satirizing or criticizing that objectification and actively participating in it. I recommend you watch the video in the first place because all of Ursa's stuff is awesome and you should be watching her anyway, and second because the subject is very relevant to this particular moment. In 8½, for example, there's a scene where Guido imagines all the women in his life as a harem of doting attendants. In that case, the objectification wasn't sexualized because the focus was on what the fantasy was saying about Guido, and none of it was good. He's self-absorbed, hypocritical, and immature. In Take It All, the focus is a little less defined. Marshall can't decide whether we're supposed to be enjoying Marion Cotillard's bumping and grinding or cringing at her being threatened by the violent male patrons. It's also more than a bit unpleasant that we have this scene where the female lead is assaulted, but it's more concerned with how the male character feels about it. Alone and abandoned by just about everybody, it's time for Guido to have his 11 o'clock breakdown number.
Nothing holds together, nothing makes a bit of sense now. Impossible to grasp or understand. How can I go on to watch the whole of my existence end up being nothing that I planned?
This would be a lot more powerful if the film images were the women from Guido's actual life rather than the random extras in the screen tests. Forced to admit that he has no movie to make, Guido pulls the plug on the project, the set is struck, the staff is let go, and the movie enters sin number 8, the drawn-out conclusion. Both 8½, and the stage version of 9 wrap things up rather quickly after Guido hits rock bottom, and leave it kind of ambiguous on how or if he's going to get his life back together. This movie feels the need to have everything resolved neatly by skipping ahead 2 years later to find Guido moping about and stalking Louisa, who has returned to her acting career and generally looks happier than we've seen her in the entire movie. Lucky for Guido, Lily is available to fulfill her designated role as wise older woman and explain the moral to him.
You're such a dope, aren't you? Making movies wasn't your problem. You were the problem.
Again,
No shit, Sherlock.
Guido decides to direct what he knows and make a movie about a man trying to win his wife back, and so that's what he does. Or what he fantasizes about, because then everything gets all metafictional with the characters from the movie putting on makeup, and the women from Guido's life coming to watch the shoot like they're having some kind of curtain call, Louisa sneaking in the back at the very last minute, and it's supposed to be all magical and stuff, but it's mostly just perplexing and unsatisfying.
Action.
Rob Marshall is one of the better film musical directors working today. You only need to look at Chicago and Into the Woods to know that. With 9, however, he bit off more than he could chew. Or perhaps he didn't bite off enough. Both the Fellini film and the stage musical are intriguing, surreal character studies, but this movie plays it too safe with little nuance, too neat resolutions, and going too soft on what is a deeply flawed central character. It's Fellini light, so the court of musical hell thinks it appropriate to punish Marshall by turning him over to the people who cornered that market long before he did, the cast of Cirque du Soleil. So let it be recorded. This session of the Infernal Court in musical hell is now adjourned.